AJ Terrell just made bank and he deserves every single penny.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, guys, if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman. Been covering the Falcons for 20 years, something like that. Formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP. Still going strong in this illustrious podcast. And I appreciate each and every one of you that is an everydayer of this podcast. And all you got to do to become an everydayer and make this podcast your first listen or first watch each and every day is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So no AKAs, guys, because we got so much to talk about on today's episode, right? We got to talk about who we're going to watch in this Jacksonville Jaguars preseason finale. It's not going to be Michael Penix. We'll talk about, the Falcons seem to be making moves this month. And so we got a couple more weeks before the season starts. And so we'll pick Jarvis Davis, my guest today of Locked On Sports Atlanta, his brain on maybe a wish list. If Terry can go out shopping a little bit more, grab a couple of other things from the store, what is on that wish list for him. But, with Jarvis Davis here of Locked On Sports Atlanta, I'm glad we have something to talk about on this podcast because Lord knows you can only wax poetic on third string roster battles. The 5% of my audience that is very much locked into that stuff. I appreciate you. You are my people, but I know for the other 95%, they just do not care. So we'll see what happens when we get to this Jaguars game. But I texted Jarvis this morning about 15 minutes after the news broke, which is about 20 minutes after I woke up this morning, about how happy I was that we have something to talk about. And that thing that we have to talk about, guys, is, if you didn't hear, the Falcons signed AJ Terrell to a 4-year extension worth $81 million, nearly $66 million in guaranteed money. Makes him the second highest paid cornerback in the NFL after Jair Alexander on an annual basis. His guarantees are the most given to a cornerback on a 4-year deal, eclipsing the mark set by L'Jarius Sneed, who got $55 million guaranteed on his 4-year contract this offseason from Tennessee. Jalen Johnson got $54 million from the Bears this offseason on his 4-year deal. So AJ Terrell got that bag. So Jarvis, I'm assuming that you were probably up a little earlier because you got kids and whatnot than when that news broke. But at least, how did you react when you first saw the news?
It just makes sense because when you think about, the level of AJ Terrell we've seen over the past few years, right? I know there are people who can talk about, 20, some years probably a little bit better than others or a little bit worse than others. Yeah, I get that aspect of it. But when you think about the totality of AJ Terrell and what he brings to the table on a pretty consistent basis, is that you're going to have good cornerback play. And I was actually talking with my guy George Foster, who used to be an NFL scout in the NFL and a player as well. And that the main thing that he said, he was like, man, good cornerbacks, you got to pay them. You don't let them walk, man. When you think about it from that standpoint, I know a lot of people getting a little issues with, oh, that's too much money on like the contract, man. It is not about the player. It's about who's next. It's about whoever's getting paid, whoever's in line to get paid, they'll get paid. Tyson Campbell, is he one of the best cornerbacks in the league? Absolutely not. But guess what? He's a good cornerback, and he's going to get his check. So I think that people need to kind of look at it from that perspective. But as far as what AJ Terrell is as a player, and I feel like he's a guy that you never hear a peep out of him. A lot of times corners can be a little bit jibber-jabber. You kind of say, hey, man, I'm ready to get my money, But AJ Terrell is not that guy. So I feel like, he's in line to have a good season this year. And I find it interesting, man. Take y'all back a little bit, back to 2020. I was talking to some people that I knew in the building that was working their little phones and everything in the building back then, and they had Jeff Okudah as the number one corner, then they had CJ Henderson, and then they had AJ Terrell. So essentially, AJ Terrell fell into their lap, by default, essentially because they know they had a need for a corner, and they just eventually end up going with them. And now we know that AJ Terrell is clear cut the best corner in that draft. Look at hindsight 2020. So I feel like, this just made too much sense for the Atlanta Falcons, and for them to sew this up, like, man, I said this on Atlanta Sports Party on Locked On Sports Atlanta, man. I just said, hey, this has the potential to be something special, man.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I agree with you, Jarvis. And, AJ definitely deserved the money that he got. We've been talking about this on this pod over the last couple of off seasons, which is like there's a certain sort of cap on how much money this team has been wanting to spend on players, just because, you pay the guys that are the leaders in your locker room. And Grady Jarrett was kind of the top dog. There's a reason why Jesse Bates' contract came in slightly under Grady Jarrett's for that reason. And so it was going to be a question of, would they be able to be willing to pay guys from outside their building or whatever more than that? But guys inside the building that they know, right? Raheem Morris knows him from he was here when they were drafted him. Terry's obviously got to see him blossom into a really good player. And you're right. I think a lot of people are going to be skeptical of this. It's always funny to me, like the minute the Falcons, or really any team, I think this is true of all fans, but obviously, we deal with Falcon fans consistently, is like the minute these guys get paid, everybody treats Arthur Blank's money like it's their money now. All of a sudden, it's like it's not your money. Like who cares? And for those
man pockets, man, pocket watches,
and so it's one of those things where it's like, and the thing I've said all summer long, because I've just been like, they have to pay AJ Terrell, because what are your alternatives? Because I look at a team like, speaking of Jesse Bates, I look at a team like Cincinnati, right? They have spent a lot of resources trying to replace Jesse Bates over the last couple of years, right? They've used multiple draft picks on safety, first round picks, second round picks, third round picks. They've spent a bunch on free agents, and they didn't, the main reason they let Jesse Bates walk, who's also represented by the same agent that represents AJ Terrell, was because of guaranteed money, right? They didn't want to give him the guaranteed money that he wanted on his contract. They've saved money in terms of guarantees, but they basically they're still in the process of adding like 5 or 6 guys to do the job that he did, right? In Cincinnati. And it's like, imagine, spending a little bit more money to solve one problem and then using those other 5 resources on other problem areas of your team. And that's kind of how I think you have to think about it with AJ Terrell, where it's like, how many resources would the Falcons have to spend cap-wise, draft pick-wise, to find a player of comparable skill level as AJ Terrell? And you can kind of just look at the revolving door at the opposite cornerback spot, the revolving door at the nickel cornerback spot, the revolving door at safety, and feel like, as much as we want to give Terry Fontenot his flowers over the last couple of weeks for the moves that he's made, it's not as if like they've been able to plug other spots on this defense with guys that you can sit there and say, this is a long-term asset. This is a guy that you can plug and play with, and you can set it and forget it for the next 3, 5, 7 years at that position. And so, is paying AJ Terrell whatever, you think he's worth, it is what it is. But like at the same time, it's like, this is money well spent, because you know what you're getting in AJ Terrell, and you can harp on the interceptions or lack thereof. But, the stat that I like, that, I put a little bit more stock into the interceptions. Again, interceptions, not to diminish their value too. They're extremely value for defense, but like forced incompletions is something that I know PFF has a stat on. AJ's top 3. Like the goal of a cornerback is, hey, don't let the ball get completed to the other guy. And he's one of the best in the league at stopping that from happening. And even if it doesn't result in interceptions, like I think he deserves, he's underrated in that sense, because I think a lot of people look at him and say, you're not making the game-changing plays, but he's making the consistent down and down in plays that are helping your defense. And that is something that is sorely needed for this defense. So that's the thing I want to say for anybody out there that's, the 2 of you that are in the comments right now typing angrily, like, why did we pay this guy? That's my rebuttal for that. So don't hit send on that comment quite.
And to be honest with you, I think it's a fair comparison to look at him like, Jake Matthews, because people can complain about, oh man, why they playing Jake? Because like as soon as they came in and paid Grady, they locked up Grady Shoe. They doggone got Jake Matthews right too, because at the end of the day, I wouldn't sit up here and say that Jake Matthews is going to be a Hall of Famer, but one thing that he's consistent as crap, man. You know exactly what you to expect when he lines up in that field, and more than likely, he's going to be on that field every Sunday. And that's a premium too. That's a premium to pay for, because you can have a guy that's all world, but if he always in the tub getting iced up or on the injury reserve, like he's not worth it. He's just not worth it. So when you talk about, I think you make a great point when you talk about bringing up that consistency, and you knowing what you're going to get. I think the Falcons are at a point right now where they're going to reward guys, because knowing what you're going to get, setting it, forget it, and just go moving on to the next thing. Like, there's so much value in that, because the Cincinnati Bengals, they are notorious for not wanting to pay people. You don't want to be looked at an organization like that. How you feel you're going to be able to bring people in? You think the Falcons would be able to bring in a guy like Justin Simmons if he knew that was going on? Or maybe Matthew Judon, even though he doesn't confirm the report, when he's talking about choosing whether to go between the Bears or the Falcons, like, you think he would have chose the Falcons if they would have been known to, hey man, they don't take care of their guys, man. They play hardball when it comes to negotiation. So I think people need to understand, like, there is something brewing in Flowery Branch. Like, hey, we take care of your guys. All you got to do is be there every Sunday. Not only be there, but play some ball. If you play some ball and be there every Sunday, they're going to get you taken care of. And the more players that you have on your roster that can do those things, it's a good problem to not be able to say, you know what? I don't know how we're going to pay 2 or 3 years down the road, but guess what? That 2 or 3 years is going to be a nice window for winning you know what.
There you go. That's ultimately at the end of the goal. At the end of the day, that's the goal, right?
For sure.
And I just have a hard time believing that the Falcons are getting closer to that goal if they were to let AJ Terrell walk out the door.
Come on, man. It just made too much sense, dog. It made too much sense.
So, again, keep your hands out that man's pockets. But if you're in the mood to fish around in other people's pockets, we got some suggestions for Uncle Terry. He's been shopping, right? Add a couple of other items, to the wish list before the season starts. We'll pick Jarvis's brain on that and more as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? When your schedule is full of kids' activities, big work projects, and so much more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. It's hard to make time for things, even things that we know make us happy. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. Therapy has taught me positive coping skills like you can only control what you can control, which I use every Sunday when I'm watching the Atlanta Falcons, and frankly, every Monday through Saturday when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons and other aspects of my life. And if you're looking to learn positive coping skills or deal with and figure out what are the things that are important for you, why not give therapy a try and start with BetterHelp, right? It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon, and you'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. So, guys, before we continue today's Locked On Falcons, I want to plug the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast that's going to help you win your league this year. All you got to do is subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So it is the month of August. It is fantasy draft time, but it's also time for you to do your last little bit shopping before the season starts, because once the season starts, we know it's hard to as they say, change horses midstream if you need to make big-time adjustments to your roster in season. And since, Terry and them, they've been out shopping these last week or so, we got 17 days before the season kicks off. Jarvis, is there any other moves that you think should be on the horizon? You're adding a couple of other items, since Terry seems to be in the mood to spend money, that you want to add to the shopping list before we get to week one?
Oh man, you know what, man? Being that, AJ Terrell got the contract and everything, so that means they got a little money in the short term, freed up a little space there. I like a guy like a Yannick Ngakoue.
Okay, okay.
That's the type of guy. I like hired guns, man. Like, hey, man, Yannick, come on down, bro. Join the party, man. All we need is for third down. We'll need you to play, all them snaps, man. Well, I'm talking about, certain days you're gonna be able to have all. Raheem Morris understands. He understands your plight and not wanting to be able to, participate in the training camp. He understands what the get down is. He understands, like, hey, after a certain day, all that money ain't guaranteed, being that you're a vet in the league. So, hey, let's give you some incentive to come up in this thing. So, hey, man, we give you 100K per sack, so let's work it out, dog. Like, that's what you want to do. So, but yeah, man, I'm greedy. Aaron. I don't know about you. I'm greedy. Let's get another one in here. Give me one more. Give me one more edge rusher. And I think like a guy like Yannick, who's always figure out ways to kind of get double-digit sacks, but never really, stick around with teams. I just kind of understand that. I don't care, to be honest with you, because like I said, we're trying to add to the room, man. I'm trying to add to the room. That culture, baby. It's all about building the culture. Like what that's what we need. We need to be able to see multiple guys. Imagine that, just multiple dudes just lining up and just going, man, on third and long. Everybody, Arne Advocator was talking about causing chaos. I was like, yes, that's what I'm talking about, man. Woo! Just get out there and just go get it. Yeah, Terry. I'm gonna need you to make that call, bro. Call Yannick and see what he's talking about, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terry and them, they're everydayers of this podcast. So whatever.
Oh
you
yeah.
say,
They listen. Oh, for sure, they listen. Yeah.
So yeah, Yannick would be fun. That cross chop is he's been spamming that move for 7-8 years now, and basically
so legit.
it's like I'm gonna get me my 8 sacks. I don't care what you do. I'm gonna use that cross chop to get me my 8 sacks, and then y'all gotta deal with that. So yeah, Yannick has no interest in playing the run. He's just like I'm
None.
DPR come in, do that cross chop. Let's get our 8 sacks, add it to the total, and let's
go.
Let's keep it
8
moving.
more, baby.
Yeah,
Get the 50 sacks this year. What?
Yeah.
What, did I just say that? What? 50? 50? Oh.
All right, Jarvis. You're getting a little crazy. 50 sacks for the Atlanta Falcons. Come on. What are we doing?
Man? Come on, man. Hey, man, look. Did I tell you there's something special brewing up in even though I can't say the word right? There's something special, man, in Flowery Branch right now. I don't know. It seems unreal, Aaron. I know you feel me on this. This doesn't seem real, dude. I literally was thinking last night. I was like, man, okay. We got Justin Simmons, Matthew Judon. Know that AJ Terrell contract is coming soon. I mean, is somebody gonna get hurt? In week 1? Like what is something has to happen. Something has to happen that's bad that they gonna have to deal with, because this just seems unreal. It just seems unreal to me that the Falcons are out here just doing moves that just make so much sense, and they're just continue to build and build and build and not being complacent or not using excuses as, oh well, we're trying to get the salary cap and all that stuff. And we know teams in this division that ain't have given two what's about that salary cap, and they figure it out, every week, but every year when they're negative $23 million in the hole. So I'll figure out a way to get where they need to be once the season starts. But yeah, man, to be able to experience this and go through this and cover through this and talk about these moves the Falcons have been making in the last a week or so, it's just been refreshing. It's almost like a cold cup of sweet tea on a hot day in Atlanta, man. Oh man, just refreshing. Just so refreshing.
I understand that. Yeah. It's been tough for me, Jarvis, because you know me. I just want to hate. I'm that humble hater.
Yeah,
and I'm just like,
where's that come from? I don't get that. Like, sometimes I go, swimming in the comments sometimes on the videos that we do, and I'm just like, where are these people? Who are they talking about? Like, did you like morph into, where you are right now? used to be like Mr. Negative Nancy or something before I start coming on the show, or what is it, man? Because it just seems like people just have such a negative view of how you look at the Falcons. Like, oh, just some anger.
When you say things that people don't want to hear, they tend to have issues with it. But it's basically what I'm saying is, like, it's been tough to come up with something. It's been tough to come up with something to hate on the Falcons this weekend.
Like how, like, man, you know what? For you to, we talked about before the show, like, man, you put out 9 shows this week? Like, for somebody who's a hater, you wouldn't be able to put out that many shows because there's been nothing to hate on in this past week or so.
The only things I can hate on is things they did last year or things they did in the past. That's basically it. I just got to throw other previous issues.
Self-inflicted wounds right there, my friend.
So it is a breath of fresh air. It is refreshing is the right word for it with what the Falcons are doing right now. And as we get into the season, it's an exciting time. But the preseason isn't quite over. So maybe I can get back to my hating ways when we talk about this Friday night action against the Jacksonville Jaguars, because people want to know who they should be keeping their eyes on, things that they should be paying attention to. Unfortunately, and this is where the hater comes in, we won't be seeing Michael Penix Jr. And, I guess we'll figure out who else we need to be watching. But I guess we'll also have to figure out if this is the last time that we see Taylor Heinicke in a Falcons uniform. So we'll pick Jarvis's brain on that, as well as who he's going to be watching in this preseason finale as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Now, the Falcons have one more game to figure out who are the right quality professionals that are going to fit their team. And if you have a small business, you're constantly looking for the right professionals that will fit your team, but you don't have to worry about taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars or sweating it out in the Georgia Heat. All you got to do is check out LinkedIn Jobs, who have the tools that can help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't any old job board. They are going to help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but just might be open for the perfect role in any given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So we know there will be no Michael Penix ruining our fun on Friday night. And as I said at the top of the show, like, these third string roster battles, this is my wheelhouse. But again, for most of the people that are watching the Falcons, it's just like, they don't care, right? But Jarvis, I'm curious, who are you watching on Friday night? But first, I need to know, you came into camp feeling like, Taylor Heinicke probably wasn't going to be here this fall, right? He's doing the Magic Johnson. I'm not going to be here, this sort of thing. And I'm curious, do you feel like that's still the case? You feel like he could do anything on Friday night against Jacksonville that can change that outcome in your mind?
Absolutely not. There's nothing he could do. I feel, that once they signed Michael Penix, and he even mentioned, like, when we're not quite wasn't aware of the whole Michael Penix signing. He kind of threw it out there as he was answering the question about something else, and I was like, oh. Yeah, so that touched him a little bit. It touched him a little bit because he took a pay cut to stick around. So you think that if if a player agrees to do something like that hey, they're taking a pay cut so they can stick around, and what the other option is, we're gonna cut you behind if you don't. So, but from a player standpoint, I kind of get why he may have felt that way, but I feel like this is his last hurrah for the Falcons, and I think this is something that he's going to be on display for. Put on display, excuse me. So hey, you get a late round pick, 6, 7 round pick or whatever, because there are going to be teams that are going to be looking for a guy that can come in and spell the quarterback, for a couple of games for injury purposes, because there is. Quarterbacks are a premium in the NFL, and there's levels to it, right? The solid backup quarterbacks, which is Taylor Heinicke. He's a decent backup quarterback. So I do feel like this is something he's going to be motivated, to go play well. And I'm sure Terry Fontenot and the rest of the front office is going to be motivating him or motivated for him to play well also, so they can get some little compensation. And they gave away a 3rd round pick for Matthew Judon. That's not what they're going to get, for Taylor Heinicke. But, the more compensation you can get in those later rounds, hey, the more you can probably trade up and get into the 3rd round if that's what you want to do in 2025. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with Taylor. I think this is his last hurrah, and it just wouldn't make any sense for him to stick around on this roster at this point.
Okay. So we'll see what's what with Taylor Heinicke on Friday night. And we'll see what's what with the rest of the team. Is there anybody other than Taylor Heinicke or, another position group that you're going to be having your eyes on this Friday night?
I'm going to be paying attention to that running back group because I feel like that's an interesting case because, some people, making final roster projections. I see Jason McClellan out there. I see Carlos Washington out there. I was like, okay, I want to see if either one of those guys kind of solidify themselves as that 3rd running back. Obviously, being the 3rd running back, you're going to have to be pretty doggone good on special teams somewhere, right? So for me, I want to be able to see if the offensive line going to be able to open up the necessary holes for those guys can put their work on display and make a case to solidify and say, hey, I'm the guy. And to be honest with you, man, I would love to see another Natron Brooks type performance. Can JD Bertrand go out there and get 3 or 4 tackles for loss or, sack the quarterback and put him on the ground or scoop and score or something like that? Just being able to justify where the Falcons taking you. I know he's a late round pick. If he doesn't make it, the world's not coming to an end. But I just love to see guys go out there and just have a performance and just really scream to the top of their lungs with their play. Hey, man, I should be on this doggone team and force the Falcons to make some tough decisions. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as far as with this game.
Yeah, for me, it's the player that you pointed out, I think, last week when we talked about the Ravens game is DeAngelo Malone, right? He made some plays on special teams in both these first 2 preseason games. If he does stick on the roster, it's going to be because of special teams, but I think he can absolutely help his cause if we can see him make a couple of splash plays. Again, he doesn't have to do a ton on defense, but if we just can get a pressure or 2, a TFL, as you say, a tip pass or something on defense to be like, hey, you know what? I can still, I can do special teams.
Something. Breathe on the stat sheet, brother.
But there's something I can do on defense as well. It's not just purely special teams. I think that will help his case to make the roster, and we'll see on that front. He's going to be playing for somebody this fall because of the special teams ability, whether it's the Falcons or somebody else. But it would be nice to sort of be like, because even if he does stick on the roster, it feels like this is probably going to be the last year of DeAngelo Malone at this point in time, unless something major happens for him on defense this year. So, getting a taste of that against the Jaguars on Friday night would be something I would enjoy seeing on Friday night. So we will see what else is in store for you guys Friday night in Atlanta against Jacksonville. We will be back after the game for another postcast. Jarvis and myself. Tenitra has gone 2 for 2 so far in the preseason postcast. Man. So, let's see if we can get the hat trick on Friday night. And, all 3 of us will be there on Locked On Falcons here on YouTube, Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube, Locked On Falcons on your audio feeds for that postcast. And, of course, Locked On Falcons will also be the home of my rapid reaction, where I will go solo to give you my thoughts on DeAngelo Malone, Taylor Heinicke, and whoever else shines in this preseason game. But that's going to do it for myself and Jarvis Davis. Continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen by subscribing and following for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out Locked On Fantasy Football, Locked On Sports Atlanta, Locked On Sports Today as your second, third, fourth listens. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.